Have a good job. Thank you very much. Our next presenter for the Inland Empire is Erik Hernandez, Senior Vice President, Lean Associates, Ontario.
I got my timer for 6 minutes. Thanks everybody for staying so far. I'm going to time myself so I know what's happening here. It's kind of full circle for me. I started as an intern in our market research department at Lee back in about 1994-ish. I remember putting together an AIR market forecast presentation for Paul and Hart about 1995. So probably when I did that, never did I think I'd be up here presenting. So it's kind of fun for me. And I thought, well, if I'm going to add any value to the presentation, how do I do that? Because you've got guys like RJ, and I think I saw Greg Gill here somewhere, Joe Vargas, Paul. They've done like 100 bazillion, dollars worth of deals over the years. So decided to have some fun with it and paint a little bit of a picture for you, and you guys can see some numbers and see what's happening out here. Do I get a click? Okay, next slide. Inland Empire. Pretty much everything east of the 57 freeway. Half of you have been out there, probably half of you haven't, because it seems like no man's land. There are people that live out there. There's an airport. Pomona, Rancho Cucamonga, Ontario, Fontana, Miraloma, kind of what we call the West End Inland Empire. That is kind of the eye of the hurricane. What's happened over the last 10 years is, especially for big buildings, development pushed all the way out east to what we call the Eastern Inland Empire, Riverside, Paris, Marina Valley, Redlands, San Bernardino. And for any user today over about 400,000 square feet, they're going to consider that one larger market, and they're going to review their alternatives in its entirety in the Inland Empire. Next slide, please. This slide is a giant data dump. I debated on putting this up here or not. There's a lot of numbers to digest. I was limited to 6 slides, so I wanted to throw as much up there as I can. Hopefully everybody can read that. It is in the attachment. Big picture. On the west end, we did 1.1 million square feet of net absorption. On the east end, we did 6.2 million square feet overall. We did about 7.4 million square feet rounded overall. Now you're going to notice that on the smaller buildings under 100,000 square feet, a lot of that net absorption was negative, whereas the big buildings over 100,000 square feet was positive. What that means is the market in the Inland Empire is healing from the top down. We're going to get to the mid-sized buildings and the smaller sized buildings probably later this year, going into next year, depending on how many give-backs and foreclosures we see. We haven't seen a lot of those, and I'll get to that on my next slide. On the right-hand side, deal activity, we can almost call that not necessarily gross absorption, but gross overall activity. I threw something up there that a lot of people didn't address, and that was investment sales. The investment sales market in the Inland Empire was on fire, especially in the second half of 2010. Multiple bid, usually type situations. Values actually increased in 2010 on buildings over 100,000 square feet. Next slide. At the beginning of 2010, people probably would have said there will be blood in the Inland Empire. I think what we could say now is they should have said there might be blood. The mass fire sale of real estate and liquidation that people thought was going to happen has not occurred. There's been a little bit of it, but not a lot. Instead, opportunities were capitalized on by nimble investors, owner users, and tenants to take advantage of deals that were out on the market. As I mentioned earlier, the market is healing from the top down. We had a big surge in activity in the second half of 2010. This is the first time I can remember, but we've seen some buyers and tenants miss out on deals because they thought values were at a certain level. Someone stepped in and beat them to the punch and paid a higher number. We may see more of that in 2011. Next slide, please. This was the Big Daddy lease comp. I called Joe Sugar to let him know that it was going to be highlighted, and he scratched his head and said, "Really, that was the biggest deal?" That was the biggest deal for an existing building lease in the Inland Empire in 2010. Some might say, well, you could have put sketches on there, but that deal was signed like 20 years ago. But that building was 1.8 million square feet. This building, existing building, 886,000 square feet, 27.5 cent net effective rate. The free rent's a little misleading. It works out to about 12 months of free rent effective over the deal. What really happened is they let Restoration Hardware phase into the building over about a 2.5-year period. Economically, that worked out to about 12 months of free rent. There's a lot of deals I could have put up on here, but that was kind of one of the highlights. Harbor Freight Tools, leasing 779,000 square feet down Marina Valley Ridge, was another big deal. In your attachments, there's a data sheet that shows some of the big leases that happened in the Inland Empire. The other one would have been, next slide. Big Daddy investment deal. LBA took down 1.6 million square feet comprised of 3 buildings. 2 of them are occupied. The 239,000 square foot building was not. When they bought it, as soon as the deal was closed, they went, hey, Ingram, would you like to lease the building next door? They said yes. They signed them fully leased. They bought it from Patton, big number, worked out to about $56 a square foot. There was about a $5 million prepaid penalty in that deal, but the $56 a foot was the total number. Next slide. Predictions for 2010. You're going to see a little bit of the good, the bad, and the ugly out there. A lot of that's going to depend on which side of the deal you're on. The hangover is going to continue to wear off in 2011. Market participants that are still alive have collected themselves. They're back with money and they're looking for deals. Capital will continue to flow back into commercial real estate because, as we all know, money never sleeps. One last bold prediction. Based on the solid net absorption numbers we've seen in the Inland Empire, especially on the East End, you're going to see a big jobs number get reported sometime in the first half of 2011, probably surprising to the upside. When you do that much in terms of net absorption, there's jobs that are following. That's going to be a little bit of a lagging indicator, but will be good news for all of us. Thank you very much.
Well, Eric, great presentation. Thank you very much.